Okay guys, I'm going to talk to you for a second about connecting polarized components, so things like LEDs, diodes, capacitors, polarized capacitors. We've talked about these in class, so let's take a look. Okay, so I have a simple setup here. I'll leave my battery disconnected for the moment because for polarized components, if you keep the battery connected, if you keep the power supply connected while you're connecting your polarized components, it could happen that if you accidentally connect them the wrong way, that could force electrical current to travel through in the wrong direction, which can burn out your components. So it's a good idea when you're prototyping, just as a habit, to keep your batteries and power supplies disconnected as long as you're not using them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk to you about, I want to remind you just how to use an LED. So if you pull out a brand new LED, typically it's going to look something like this. So the wires are nice and straight, and one of them is clearly longer than the other. Okay, you have to remember, the long wire is the one that gets connected to the more positive end of the circuit. Okay, so that's one way to tell. Another way to tell is, and it's hard to see on this video, but if you look very, very carefully at the short, at the side of the LED that has the short wire, you can see that it's flat on the back. Okay, that is just another way to indicate the negative part of the LED. So again, it's probably hard to see on this video. Maybe if I tilt it up a little bit so you can see the difference. There's flat, and then there's flat, and there's not flat. Okay, the easiest way to tell is checking to see which wire is longer. If you're digging through LEDs and you have one that looks something a little bit more like this, where it's kind of stretched out, it's kind of messed up a little bit, it's just a good habit. Try and straighten them out as best you can to see which one is the longer end. Alright, so as I said, the long end needs to be connected to the more positive part of the circuit. So in this example, so I have a breadboard set up with a wire coming from my positive part onto row 21. Sorry, that's 15, 16, 17, row 18. Okay, so row 18 is connected to positive, so I want my long wire connected to positive. Well, where do I want my short wire connected to? Well, that's up to you. Okay, as long as it's not connected to the same row. It's a very common mistake that people just learning how to use a breadboard make. A lot of people will take this and they will put both wires on the same row. So they'll put long wire on row 18 and the short wire on row 18, just like this. Right? And the problem with that is the breadboard is connected to itself between those two wires. That whole row is connected, so what you actually have is a short circuit. No electricity is going to travel through this LED. Instead, it's just going to travel through the breadboard. So I'm going to keep one wire connected, my long wire connected to the positive part, which is on row 18, and then I can connect my short wire to any other row I want. In this case, I put it on row 20. My last step is just to connect row 20 to ground. So I can use any hole on row 20. I'm going to use the one that's most convenient right next to the ground, and I'm going to drag my resistor over. And again, I can plug it into any of the holes in ground. And now we can test it. So I'm going to put my power source into the positive, and I'm going to put my grounded wire into negative, and we should see it light up. All right, so that works just fine. All right, another component to think about, okay, these certainly aren't the only two, but they are two of the most common, The other one is a polarized capacitor. Polarized capacitors are generally a little bit easier to tell which side is positive and negative because aside from just the fact that they also have a long wire in the positive direction, they have a very clear stripe that indicates the negative. So again, you're going to connect it the same way. I would connect my long wire to the more positive part of the circuit, and my short wire, in this case, since my resistor is already there, I'm going to plug that also into row 20. Right, like that. Right, and now it's connected just like my LED. Now this is not an indicator, this is a regular component, so we're not going to see anything happen to it. But this is just to illustrate the fact that you always want to make sure that if your circuit isn't working, there's a possibility that you have flipped your components. You want to make sure any polarized components are facing the correct direction. All right? And we'll talk about more later. Have a good day.